I'm Jennifer Myatt with Lexington's Division of Environmental Services. We're out here in front of one of the many retention ponds in Lexington. You might see them throughout your neighborhood or near your workplace, and you might also see smaller detention basins that maybe don't have water in them all the time, but that have some flow when it's been raining. So we're going to talk a little bit about how to properly take care of these ponds and basins. I'm out here today with Jennifer Carey, who is Lexington's Stormwater Permit Coordinator. Hello, Jennifer.
Hi, Jennifer.
Can you tell us a little bit about the ponds and basins?
Sure. The ponds and basins that you see scattered throughout Lexington provide flood control, and they also settle out pollutants. When it rains or when it snows, the water as it runs over our driveways, lawns, rooftops and sidewalks and streets eventually ends up in these ponds and basins. And as the water is flowing over those surfaces, it can pick up pollutants like pet waste and lawn chemicals, bacteria, and other sources of pollutants. And when they reach the ponds and basins, by allowing the time that it has, usually a day or two after a rain event, for those pollutants to settle out, then slowly that water is released to our creeks and streams. It's cleaner when it's released, and it's also released at a slower rate than it would be if it just went directly to the streams and creeks without going through the basins and ponds, and that reduces erosion.
So the ponds and basins are really important for reducing pollution, but it sounds like it would be a big help if people could do stuff to reduce water pollution before it gets to the ponds too. Are there steps that people can take?
Oh, absolutely. First of all, picking up after your pets, any pet waste, keeping that out of our drainage systems. Another thing that people can do is to make sure that if they've got anything stored outside, that it's under cover and runoff cannot get to it so that it can't pick up pollutants. If you have any bare areas on your lawn, make sure you get those seeded and mulched or sodded as soon as possible. Don't let that area become a source of erosion. And if you do plan to fertilize your lawn, do a soil test first to make sure that you're putting the correct amount of phosphorus. Anything higher than what's needed is going to end up being runoff or getting collected by the runoff and ending up in our streams and creeks. And just general good housekeeping practices, keeping litter and things picked up on your property is always an excellent way to keep that kind of thing from running off into our system, into our drainage system, or eventually getting into our basins and ponds. If you happen to have a stream or a creek that is on your property, or if you do have a detention basin or retention pond on your property, another good idea is to allow at least a 30-foot buffer of natural vegetation grow along the edge of that stream or along the edge of that pond. That just keeps waterfowl and other things from accessing the creek or the pond as easily, which will lower the bacterial levels in our various streams and creeks. Also, you can make sure to not ever put anything down the storm drain. It is strictly for rainwater and snow melt, and anything beyond that is not acceptable.
Now I'm out here with Bill Warren, who's in charge of the city's Basin and Pond Inspection Program. And he can give us an idea of what owners who have basins or ponds on their property can do. But first, we should start with the basics of what's the difference between a retention pond and a detention basin.
Yeah, the retention ponds typically have a permanent pool which lasts all year long. It'll have water in it all the time. We call these retention ponds or wet basins. The detention basins are ones that hold water for a short period, up to 1 or 2 days until the rain recedes, and they run off at a controlled rate to help control flooding and prevent erosion downstream.
Thank you for that explanation. Now people understand that retention ponds are wet and always have water in them, and detention basins just hold water right after it rains. So are there differences in maintaining the two?
A lot of the maintenance issues are always typically the same. Pick up trash, debris, tree limbs, litter, and try to remove sediment as it accumulates.
These all sound like really good ideas to keep your basin or your pond functioning properly. Are they also required by the city if you have a pond or basin on your property?
Yes, they are requirements. City ordinances does state that privately owned basins require them to be maintained. Now, maintaining your basins is a lot of the stuff we've already talked about, but we also have a list of issues that we can go over, and we'll go over them specifically. Keep ponds or basins mowed, including the embankments, Remove litter, tree limbs, and debris. Solder seed bare areas, including the areas on the embankments. Take care of landscape areas, including trees and shrubs. Keep trees and burrowing animals off the dams and berms. Keep pesticides and herbicides, stockpiles, and pollutants out of the basin. No structures such as buildings, gazebos, fences, trampolines, swimming pools, and so on are allowed in the basin or on the basin walls. And finally, no field dirt or anything else will be put in the basin without the approval of the city's Division of Water Quality. And we will add one more, that you do not put your leaves or grass clippings inside basin areas.
These tasks definitely seem necessary to keep the basins and ponds functioning properly. But what about major structural repairs? Who's responsible for those?
Now, the city does have several basins and ponds throughout the city that we take full responsibility for and do all the maintenance and repairs on each and every one of those. But the ones that are owned by private owners, commercial, residentials, and homeowners association run ponds and basins, the owners or the supervisors of those are required to take care of all the maintenance and upkeep.
What about maintenance in residential areas with public easements?
Where there is a public easement for access for repairs, the city will take care of all of the major structural repairs, including inlets, outlets, structures, pipes, gape-ins, stones, paved ditches, and everything like that. But keep in mind, that is just for the ones that have public access easements. The ones that do not, the owners are still responsible for all the maintenance of those.
So every pond and basin owner, no matter whether they have public easements or not, is responsible for basic maintenance, correct?
That's right.
So how does the city know if this basic maintenance is getting accomplished?
Okay. Throughout the year, we inspect our detention basins twice yearly, and we also do our retention basins once monthly. And we also communicate regularly with the owners if we find something out of compliance to make sure that these are brought into compliance.
Are there any common problems and issues you see that property owners should be taking care of?
The most of the issues we see are trash, litter, and debris that are failed to be picked up, and minor maintenance of just removing sediment before it's too heavy to lift. This is being done after the ponds draw down, which give it a day or two to dry out after the ponds draw down. It's much easier to remove sediment and debris after it's dried out versus the heavy water-laden stuff.
In the short time that we've been out here filming this video, we've seen a lot of geese on the pond. Are geese a problem for water quality?
They sure are. We have several geese populations on our ponds throughout the city, and these geese leave a unique calling card. If you've ever been around one of our ponds, you'll know exactly what I'm talking about. These things are not the best for water quality, and they're just a nuisance to people being around the ponds also. This stuff, once it gets in the water, can turn the water green and get some bacteria-laden water that could be ingested if kids or anybody's playing within these ponds. Also, it acts as a fertilizer to help the algae grow throughout the ponds, and the more we can do away with it, the better off we are, I do believe.
Is there anything that can be done about the geese?
The one thing you could do is change their habitat. Geese love a lush manicured lawn or ways wherever they're at. They like the benefit of being able to see their predators while they're on the ponds or lakes. And if you could just change the habitat just a little bit, it would help a lot with that. By leaving tall grasses growing on the sides to kind of create that little buffer, that way it takes away the anticipation of the predator, and sometimes after you do that, after a while, they'll leave the ponds.
Any other tips to help their ponds and basins function properly?
Just a few more. If you do have trouble seeding or getting the seed to take on embankments or around your ponds, we suggest that you could use a turf mat or a netting or some type of something to hold your mulch down while we do get germination of grass. Another good point would be if you have a pet waste sign, to pick up your pet waste sign somewhere located on the property, and also provide baggies and trash cans for their disposal of. If you do notice trash, litter, debris, or erosion entering your property from an upstream location, you can either contact the owner of the property or contact LFUCG.
Thanks to Jennifer and Bill for joining us out here today to tell us all about pond and basin maintenance. If you have a pond or basin on your property and you have questions about major structural repairs or other maintenance, you should call LexCall at 311 so that we can connect you to the correct person in water quality to help you with these issues.